Hey neighbors, the Handyman here with Initiative Coffee Company along with noted promo extraordinaire Jake the Snake Del Maro, and today we're talking about DDAL 3-4. It's all in the blood. Writers Dave Olson, editors Claire Hoffman, Chris Tulach, and Travis Woodall. This is an 8-hour module for Tier 3 play, tuned for 5 12th level characters. Party's tasked with retrieving a drow alchemist as well as a living demon-tainted fire giant. Part 1, Desperate Times. The party meets a representative of Solemn Nedrazak named Mercivius Dernriv. Dernriv sends the party to the Howling Pits to retrieve the alchemist Zaven Tanarthus in order to end the effects of the fiendish blood in the fire giants of Mimidra. The party makes their way down and moves toward the Howling Pits. The Howling Pits is alleged to be where Zaven was taken and sold to Meram Vas. Jake, start us off. Desperate times indeed.
Well, you know, the best way to make any party annoyed is to give them ridiculous names. And then you just spell them out to the person taking the notes. And then them just say, well, I guess I spelled that wrong. Because that happens every day.
There are so many names in this module.
So, we start in Elventree. So we're kind of out of the Underdark and then immediately thrust back in. So I don't know why this couldn't have happened elsewhere. Mm-hmm. I guess they're just use your discretion. This could be in a situation where I believe the last tier 2 was Underdark, adjacent, whatever. This could happen in the Underdark because there's no reason why you travel miles north or miles up to go back to Elventree when you're already in the Underdark. Mm-hmm. That is just part of the symptoms of AL, of not in a bad way, but like of drop-in play.
Drop-in play and like a lack of like consistency between stories, right?
Yeah, I don't even know if it's like that's a bad thing.
Sure.
It's just use your discretion here because right. You could just be in the where all the myconids are. The Sportum. So I don't mind this. Mercivius could have been met if you were playing a tier in season 2 from Bolt Smelter's books, which is kind of cool to keep the whole idea of moving, plot lines semi together, like the attempt or at least the tipping of the hats, and that I do really like. But that's not really what we're here for in an 8-hour mod. They're gonna get the info one way or another, and you gotta keep like. I'm going to say this multiple times throughout this video. You got to keep this thing moving. This train is not going to run itself, and it's going to slow down to a slog. If you are not prepared for this mod, close the mod right now. Hand it back to either the con creator, the con person, and be like, hey, this is not it.
Realistically, I don't think you're going to be asked to run this at the con anyway. Most cons don't want you to run 8-hour content. Sometimes...
It can occur. I've actually have played the last version of this mod at a con, and the DM was not prepared.
Sure. Usually these long mods are played like during an overnight slot if it's like a 24-hour convention. Yeah. I know that's the only time I've seen like the season 1 8-hour mod run was overnight.
But this is a prep heavy mod.
It's
and so is
a
the next
lot
one.
of prep. Like, yeah.
You're 50 something pages or so, and if you print it, cool, but like just be aware that this is like, don't go into this thinking you can wing it. Like this is not this ain't it.
Right.
And the other note is this is you need to break this up if you're going to run this at a table online. I would heavily recommend cutting this into 2 4-hour slots.
Yeah.
It might be 4 hours and 2 hours. It could be 4 hours and 5 hours. Like it's just this mod has a lot of combat.
There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of like unpredictable times.
And things can get out of control really fast.
Yeah. And we'll talk about
as we continue
the other 8-hour mod next week, and that's even more the case there. But anyway,
good mods either way.
Yeah. Either way, part 1 here, are there any pitfalls or anything?
I don't think so. I feel like it's pretty straightforward to give you descriptions. You're going to the Howling Pits. It's just as awful as it sounds. Yeah. So I think, that's it for me at least. Is there anything that you saw?
No, just bringing us back to the way down. for the 30th time this season, I guess. I don't know. It's nice to have consistency there. Clearly, there's only one access point to the Underdark in the region. That's nice to see that level of continuity.
Yeah.
I don't know. Part 2, the Howling Pits. The heroes are immediately met with the perils of the Underdark in the howling winds that give the location its name. The heroes meet with 4 selected encounters, either environmental or combat focused. 2 of these feature particularly maddening winds and escaped slaves fleeing the den of the whispered word. What's going on here, Jake?
Another one of those situations where you don't roll in this table, just choose. I think any of them are fine, honestly. Just kind of gauge where your party's at, if they want combat or if they want more exploration, because fighting 2 fire giants sucks.
Yeah,
and
there's also a lot of combat coming up. So like,
yeah, this is a roaming encounter for whatever reason it's worth. But like, I mean, technically you get a long rest at the end of part 5, I think. 4.
I think so, yeah.
So like, yeah, you can throw stuff at them, but just be cognizant that this is a time. It's not a timed adventure, but think of the time it's going to take to run these, because setup, for a combat's going to take 5 to 10 minutes. Even if it's just the fight, like the first roll, which Giants Gone Wild, where it's 2 fire giants. 2 fire giants are still a meaty chunk. They have ACs of 18 or more, and then they have points. And they do a pile of damage. Yeah. So like, maybe if your party is leaning heavier onto the upper ends of the scale of the level range, it might not be as tough because they can banish or whatever the heck it is, but it's still a tough fight. And one swing is going to take out a quarter of their health. So
yeah, 28 hit damage on average per hit.
Fifth to a quarter, but it's still going to be chunky, and it's not necessary if you need it to be. I just think it makes more sense to they suggest in the mod doing 2 combats, 2 environmentals, and just figure out what your party is looking for, because if you're going to be running this 8 hours, and let's say it was at a con setting, maybe you ask for the players ahead of time, be like, hey, what are you playing?
Yeah, you could do that for sure. I guess like that up. Con play is typically a little bit more, I guess, min-maxed, for lack of a better word, so you can get away with a little bit more combat, but it does tend to... Keep in mind, like, 12th level party...
Don't throw fire giants at them, please.
58 or 28 hit points is a third of their health, not even a fourth or a quarter, like, especially if they're wizards or bards or whatever, so...
Yeah. I don't think really, other than that, there's too much. There is the end portion where you encounter the escaped slaves, which is an interesting little social encounter before you actually get to the Den of the Whispered Word. And
then there's the winds, which is
maddening
suggested
effects.
As a required mini
encounter.
Yeah.
But I would just say, they have a little bit of a story. It kind of like they're now leaning in, like, at this point in the series, you're leaning a lot heavier into the madness and what's happening, which I do like that transition where it was kind of like an undercurrent versus now like hey, this is a riptide, like this madness thing is a problem. And
in tier 3 you were responsible for dealing with it instead of like dealing with elven ghosts in old trees and whatnot.
I do like about this part, and then as the next kind of set of the first off the mod, but like the next couple parts, is it really shows the Underdark for how awful it is. Like, it's not friendly. It's
everything wants to kill you.
Yeah, it's a hunt or be hunted kind of situation, and I don't mind that. And I know in the next mod, or no, in this mod, they mention, like, oh, there's some names you can give people that are, like, a little aggressive, and some of, like, the random encounters are like, kind of detailed, gory, and, like, I think that you could even, as a DM, if you are leaning more into the environmental aspect, really set up the scene to be like, this place sucks. Yeah. It's not you're walking through a forest and there's unicorns and rainbows and centaurs. It's like, this place is not
It's a hostile environment.
And you can really show that through the escaped slave encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Like how it just sucks.
You can show that through the escape slave encounter. You should gauge your table before you show anything through slave encounters. But I mean, all of season 3, all of season 4, you really have to like be cautious of who's at your table. It can get pretty aggressive and pretty out of hand pretty quick. You know, season 3 is all about madness. Season 4 is all about fear checks. Like.
But this is also...
Hopefully people know what they're getting involved in when they sign
exactly.
up for
like, if you're playing an 8-hour mod, I feel like at this point in time in Adventures League, we're in Season 10 already, and, you know, we're 7 seasons behind recording, but, like, you know, I feel like people at this point know what you're doing versus a fresh Season 10 mod coming out.
Sure.
So let that little snippet of me just keep on recording new seasons and keep on putting that in there. That's what we need to do.
Right. Part 3, Den of the Whispered Word. The heroes are tasked with retrieving Zaven. This can be direct through an envoy with Maramil Vas or through stealth and cunning. Directly, the party may pay a hefty sum of 10,000 gold to have Zaven released. Or they can go to Part 4, the Hanging Gardens, directly, where your heroes can choose stealth and guile. They'll make their way down to the Hanging Gardens. They'll need to contend with the Coven of Night Hags, the haggiest of all the hags. After dealing with the Night Hags, they can recover Zaven and make their way back to Spordome. Jake, parts 3 and 4 here. 2 different approaches for kind of the same end goal.
Hey, you know, someone to be noted in this mod is a Snierf Neblin. His name's Grabberforth. He is surprisingly like a problem. If combat comes out, he will just murder you. Like he starts his thing off like time stop.
Yeah.
Then you're like, oh well, that's not good. That's like an 8th, 9th level spell.
Time stop.
And then it's like specifically says it's like he will cast spells depending on how many actions he's able to take via the time stop spell. However, he will always use his final action to time stop to cast Circle of Death on as many people as he can. Oh, and by the way, there's a Shield Guardian.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if there's a way that's beyond just negotiating with this guy. Not Grabberforth, because he's just a butler. But actually dealing with Maramil Vas, because he's a demon. This place that you're in is first off, the wording and descriptions of this place is very wonderful, because it's like a palace in the middle of horrid just bad place. So it's like almost a respite. But then you see what's in here. You've got Maramil Vas, who loves to negotiate and like will negotiate he'll negotiate whatever he wants. Because he still has a chip that you need. Yeah. But I like the fact that he's got that. And then it's like he's so like figured it out in terms of like he wants to keep negotiating. He's got like a pair of Nikoloths around. He's got his butler. He's got a shield guardian. He himself. It's like kind of interesting seeing how like this is. It almost feels like if you go into combat, you are not going to enjoy it. I don't know why though.
I don't know. The Grabberforth's listed as a CR 12 with 9th level spells. Maybe.
You know, that happens.
Maybe.
You know. But you know, you can do persuasion checks and stuff after enough negotiating and like.
And neither one of them are particularly hostile, right? Like,
well, Gabber is a little bit.
Can get if he gets very hostile, but he doesn't start that way.
Yeah, he's like a normal butler, and it's like, hey, we're here to see Maramil Vas. He's like, oh, okay, but it's like that's because he's got direct orders to. Yeah. Like if someone mentions him by name, he's required to bring them.
Right.
But otherwise, he's kind of standoffish. But you know, it is what it is. He's a butler, and I like the idea of like. You know,
force cage too.
He's not stacked. Good. Yeah, he's like out of this encounter. I think he's actually the most dangerous person. If combat were to ensue, he will just mess your party up.
Yeah.
And
Force cage, incendiary cloud, time stop. That alone, like,
will just wipe your party.
Like, yeah.
And it happens all at the same time.
Yep.
Like, but you get to negotiate with him, which this next part I think is interesting. If you go to I'm taking this perception as negotiations happen.
Mm-hmm.
Maribel Voss will not go down into the Hanging Gardens, which will always cause a fight with the hags, which makes zero sense to me.
Sure.
He's like, yeah, go get him. But if you say, hey, can you come with? He's like, no. He's like, that's not part of the negotiations.
Yeah.
And you're just like at that point, like, God, fuck. And so that means you have to go and deal with hags and the bugs. There's some bugs on the ceiling. Is that what they are? Yeah, Chasmays. And they suck too because they can hurt a lot. And then you have a hag coven to deal with. And then you have a hag coven to deal with. It's like you're gonna get into this combat. It's gonna stink, but this is where you get through it. You get Zaven, then you bring him back to Sportum. Cut 4 hours.
Right.
That's 4 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I would, in terms of a hag coven fight, if your party is newer and don't know about hags, I would make it clear that like they are working together to cast spells, right? Like that is something you have to telegraph to your party, because this is a much more manageable fight for them once one of the night hags is dead, right?
Yes.
So they are twice as powerful when there's 3 of them than when there's only 2. So just individually, they are twice as powerful when there's 3 of them as opposed to when there's only 2. Not just because there's 3 of them instead of 2.
And as a DM, remember the hag coven goes away. Just reiterating that, and the spell slots bullcrap goes away. They can't cast those spells. I've had issues with the past where DM was being very, very against the players, and I don't know if it can make this any clearer in all the mods that we've reviewed. Don't be that guy.
Right.
Like, I will leave you a bad review.
The whole purpose of these videos is to help you not be that guy, right? Like, we want to make it fun for you, fun for the table. I don't enjoy being a combative DM. I don't think it's a particularly fun time for me. I know it's not fun for my table, so hopefully these videos can give you some advice in terms of like how to make it a manageable, enjoyable time for everybody.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, if you go, I think at that point you get Zaven. He's kind of quiet for a while.
Yeah.
But
that is the first half of this 8-hour mod. There is a break here for a week to go by if you want to break this into 2 weeks, or just a long rest. You have about a week before part 5 picks up in game. I guess a 10-day because it's Forgotten Realms, but at that point, part 5, Blood Needs. After his recovery, the alchemist Zaven requires the blood of a living demonic fire giant to finish his experiments and come up with a way to cure it. The party will need to enter Mimidra in secret by way of the Black Ember Outpost, a small outpost set up by the fire giants of Mimidra. This presents the party with a problem. They have to bring a giant back, which is tough. They're going to have to start getting creative already and come up with some kind of plan. I would telegraph that here. I wouldn't wait until they like have a fire giant and be like, all right, now how are you going to get him back?
And there's no hand waving there. This is not a hand wave situation, which is kind of...
It's also a really good time to like let your players come up with their own plan, right? Like I don't think they are served by hand waving it. I don't think the module is served by hand waving it. I think like there is benefit to like forcing them into coming up with some kind of strategy here.
Once again, one of those situations where I tell the table where they're like, "Oh, we can just hand wave this." I'm like, "No,
nope, sure not,
not happening."
Yep.
This is one of those times where, as a DM, you can be that guy, because I think this is because we think it's an important portion of character building and also teamwork. Which, if I remember correctly, is all what D&D is about, teamwork.
Right. Yeah.
and working in situations you don't want to work in.
And if they don't like it, you tell them the handyman told you it was fine.
Yeah.
And if they don't know who that is, you tell them about our YouTube series.
Yeah. And all of the fun names that I have that are going on my resume soon. Right. I'm just gonna have to rewatch all of them.
At least wants me to make a supercut.
Yeah. But in reality, like this is, as Brian said, this is a good time to give them the opportunity. Like, you can go step away and grab a drink or grab some snacks.
You don't necessarily have to be. I enjoy when these planning opportunities come up. I like stepping away because it means I get to be surprised by their plan when they enact it as a DM, and that's fun for me. So I don't know. I think these kind of opportunities, and there's a similar opportunity in the next 8-hour mod to like let the players kind of like
do
facilitate stuff. I think these opportunities are too few and too far between in AL, but in D&D in general. I think it's at this point D&D is so focused on like role playing and everyone being at the table that just like letting your party go and coming back and experiencing it that way is a lot of fun for me. So
still, if this maybe like where you like decided to take this is where you started to pick up for the next week, like this mod becomes a lot more manageable. Still, there's a lot that goes on when you have these more open terrains once you get to like near Mimidra itself. Yep. So before I jump into that part, just make sure like you're aware that this is a detail-oriented city and there's kind of no formal way of running it.
Yeah.
Just be ready for D&D to happen.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to like know
5% planning, 95% you making it up on the fly.
Right. You're just gonna have to know like the gist of all of the locations and just kind of roll with it.
Yeah. But other than that, I think that's at least as much foresight I can give. But maybe this is a good time also for your character. Like, what did they do during, like, let's say you montaged a week of downtime. Ask what they did. They could acquire some resources. Like, I would say this is maybe outside the purview of the mod, but sure. I'm also okay saying that you are in a mini stronghold at this point.
Right.
Of the resistance, and if you needed something, and being that you're a tier 3 character, you could get it.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
Like,
I mean, obviously, like you're a week away from everything, right? So it has to be something that's pretty like already located there, but it takes a week to get to Spordome from anywhere. So,
I mean, we have magic spellcasters and stuff that can also have the capacity to do that. So, I don't think that this is outside the question. Being like, hey, by the way, you got to transport a fire giant. And maybe they do have something that is, they got a wagon, they get something, I don't know. Yeah. But like that could be a situation which could be solved with just a little bit of planning and giving your players maybe a little bit more freedom than AL would typically give. I think that could be a nice thing to do, and creative solutions always work. So
yeah,
or most of the time.
Part 5, Black Ember Outpost. Black Ember Outpost is staffed by giant cannon hellhounds. If the heroes can manage to operate stealthily, limited encounters are possible. Otherwise, they're in for long-fought battles with several fire giants and ogres, as well as their domesticated beasts. After making their way through the outpost, they can move forward toward Mimidra.
These are fights.
I would give your party as much berth as you think is possibly appropriate to stealth their way through Black Ember Outpost.
It's near impossible.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you're going to encounter something, which at that point in time, very, very fortunate that we had somebody with a silence spell, because this thing makes these combats manageable.
Yeah.
I would say that's kind of the way to do it. This part alone can take an hour and change just from the combat. I think there's not much more I got to say about the Black Ember Outpost. It's a cool described area. It's got neat descriptions and stuff.
Yeah,
there's a lot of fire giants and other crap in here.
It's also 6 fire giants and 6 ogres and 5 hellhounds. Like, there's a lot of stuff that is not
try to avoid
super
if possible.
easy. Yeah.
Try to avoid. I mean, I don't think you should entirely miss one of the combats, but I think that you shouldn't fight all 3 sets of people.
Sure. And I think like the big thing here is like give your characters some breath here. If they're making efforts to be stealthful, maybe those are the dice you fudge tonight. I don't know.
Yeah,
don't get slowed down and caught up and hung up in Black Emperor Outpost. It's like a historically interesting location, but not, frankly, the main focus of the module. Part 7, Mimidra. Upon reaching the taken city, the heroes meet an imp named Pip-Yap, and they find 2 potential sources for the source of blood. Either they can assault a fiend-born fire giant in the 6-fingered courtyard, or in the Colosseum. Both of these routes risk random encounters and end with stiff fights against giants and their companions, either several Cambions or several Bulgara. In the end, the party can get a giant and make their way back out of the city, fleeing once again to Spore Dome. Jake, Pip-Yap, the introduction of Pip-Yap, I guess now well-known.
First time that he's noted in season 3. It happens in season 1.
Oh yeah, he's in.
Doesn't happen in Tales Trees Tell or something like that. I think that's the one 1-8.
It works for the hag or whatever.
Yeah. Or yeah, it knows where the hag's at. Yeah.
It's the first time he shows up in season 3.
Very interesting encounters. I mean, Pip-Yap is one of those characters like Elisan that just like shows up, and like not as much as Elisan does, but like he's got cool story awards that come with him.
Pretty involved in season 9.
Yeah, like he's interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
It's just, it feels like this was a comic relief that was like kind of inputted in here, because it's like you've been just I don't know. It's
definitely an information dump.
Yeah.
And they needed some kind of character to do that. So they brought back
no better person
favorite.
than him.
Yeah.
Then this is where the random tables begin and the nightmare that is Mimidra begins.
Yeah.
Simply put, you can never be prepared for this part.
Right. Yeah.
Like you can't. Like, you can know what's going to happen or know what like the tale is about, or what descriptions you can have, but this thing is just naturally a beehive or wasp nest. Like, your player's going to kick it, and if their alarm goes off, they're going to die. Like, that simple. Yeah. Like, you're in a city of fire giants, and at this point, how I think my players understood is that there's one right answer here and one wrong answer here. There was the Gladiator Coliseum, and then there was a more peaceful courtyard. And I was like, the courtyard looks pretty nice, because you're like, going to the Coliseum is just a death sentence. Yeah. Like, I don't know, as a DM, I could sit mulling it over in my head. There's not a way they don't die. Like,
there's just not enough resources, especially for like a 12th or 13th level party. There's not enough resources on the table to manage those encounters effectively. Well, there's no like adjustments really.
If they just walked into it, like, what is it? Like, okay, so no matter what, you're gonna have a combination of something of the CR level being from the fight 15 plus. Like, just where it's like, hey, opponent 1 and opponent 2 that you're going to be fighting, if you make it to the Coliseum. If you want to get the giant, which in the description it says itself, there is, I believe, over 90 giants in the stands. They're not going to let you out.
Like, yeah, like, and like on the way to the Coliseum, like, they go through the Southern Residential District. There's 8 fire giants there before they get to the Coliseum.
Like even if they made it to the Coliseum, they're not going to long rest. No. They can't. And then to get to the guy who's then who's a Fiendborn fire giant, has 4 Barglaws, which is another just fatty amount of hit points.
Yeah.
And then a fire giant. And then on top of that, if they don't bait him in, which I don't know how this interaction works. I feel like it's too unclear. As a DM giving tips to other DMs, I would just say, like, don't go that way. Like, I don't think I even prepped it when I was looking at it I skimmed over it when I ran this for the table. I was like, they're not going to be this dumb.
Yeah, and I think that's true.
Not this dumb.
The only thing I can think of is if you have like a big like fighter barbarian heavy party and they hear the word Colosseum and they get excited about it.
But then you should also say, you look out on the way to the Colosseum, you see 10 fire giants in front of you. Mm-hmm. And then that should go, as a player, maybe not a good idea.
Maybe we should take our level 12 party a different direction.
Yeah. So then that kind of gets to the part where you get to fight in the courtyard, which I think is actually a pretty fun fight.
I think so. I think the Cambions are a lot more manageable than Bulgara are. I think the lead up to the courtyard is more entertaining.
And I think also if I remember the map correctly, it's a lot quicker to get back out.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, how would you? That's gonna keep on pushing the point. Why would you go to the gladiator pit? You're gonna bring a dude off. Let's say you do somehow acquire a wheelchair kind of situation. Like, you then have to go back. Let's say you snuck through and got to the Colosseum. You knock the dude out. You have to now bring him back, which I'm giving you disadvantage on your stealth checks because you have an in-tow fire giant commander. Like, they're looking for him now.
Yep. The only way I could make I could see this working is if, like, the Colosseum situation, like, if you lose, you become a slave to the winner, but, like, that has its own laundry list of problems in
you can't force play. You can't force somebody to lose their character unless it specifically says.
No. What I mean is like if the fire giant loses in the Colosseum, he is in servitude to the party or whatever.
But he would never fight in the Colosseum because he's only a person that's just around. So, like, the whole situation, like,
it's a mess. Like,
it's a mess, and, like, there's not enough guidance in here because it suggests, like, oh, you could bait him out. It's like, why?
Yeah.
Like, as soon as that guy goes missing, 90 fire giants are gonna go and find you.
Yeah. There's not a good way to deal with it. So the long and the short of it is send your party through the six-figure courtyard. Anyway, in conclusion, with the key to a secret weapon in hand, Zaven can make a tonic to eliminate the demonic corruption within fire giants of Mimidra. Soon, the combined folks of Elventree, Spordome, and the rebel drow of Mimidra will be able to mount an assault to take back the city. See our next week's module 3-16. Any final notes, Jake?
The only one that I wanted to say is at the end of part 7, you have to bring whomever back, which in and of itself says go to the encounter table again and deal with that. So the mod's not over once this fight's done.
Yeah, that's true.
Unless your party is ridiculous and has Fat Mar in it and
Big
Mar, whatever. Fat Mar's. I've been playing too much season 1.
Oh, right.
Big Mar in it, and
he has modify memory or something.
Or he has some spell that just allows you to teleport.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was. Recall something or.
Astral recall or not astral recall.
Area or like whatever. Yeah. That was a solution. So I also want to say creativity on spellcaster behalf and not just having big boom spells is kind of something.
And that's why it's important to let your party know ahead of time that this is going to be something they're going to need to do, because it means that they can like your divine casters can prep spells that are going to be beneficial for this.
Yeah.
Right? Like they can keep focused on like the task at hand.
Yep.
And they can prep things like recall instead of another flame strike or whatever. You know what I mean? Like flame strike is not going to be super effective in here. Like
if you're casting flame strike at fire giants, I don't know. That might be, you might just be a glut for punishment at that point.
Yeah, I don't know.
But like, I think that's also noted in the, like, as a DM, as we spoke about at the beginning of this part, was let them know the distance.
Yeah, your responsibility is to give them the tools they need to be successful, and then to challenge that success, right?
Yeah.
So if they don't know what they're going into, it's not really a reasonable expectation. I don't know. I think
I don't like going like literally that face at my party, but like if you as a DM have given them the tools, given them the information, it is up to them to how they want to deal with it.
Yeah, 100%.
So I do think there is some. There's a point in time in this mod where you as a DM go like
right.
Throw your hands up.
You, yeah.
It's like I'm giving you, as Brian has done in the homebrew we're playing in, their own actions are causing their own problems. So if they do not take responsibility for said actions, they're gonna get smacked in the face.
Yep.
So.
Anyway, there it is, DDAL 3-4. It's all in the blood. Thank you so much for listening to some advice to streamline and run it at your tables. Be a good neighbor, give us a thumbs up, and subscribe. Toll the Dead for notifications. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. And from now until the next time, roll together.